Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our discussion of the very last Supernatural episode, Carry On. And I know everybody has a lot of feelings that they would like to share, and we would like you to do that today. But first, before we get started on this, I do first want to thank my panelists who have been here that, throughout this whole time, and how much you are appreciated. So thank you so much. And to all of our viewers, whether you've been here live with us, which that also shows a lot of dedication, we appreciate that. And to those of you who watch these later, we also appreciate that. So the first thing I would like to do before I have the panelists introduce themselves is just to give you a few announcements about some upcoming things on that we'll have here on the channel and that may be of interest to hopefully everyone, or at least to some of you. The first thing is that a week from tomorrow, our first monthly author interview will go up, and that will be should go up on Monday the 30th. And stay tuned for information about that later, about who that is going to be. And then in December, we will be doing another author interview, but also I will have a discussion of primarily the second season of the new Charmed series that is also covered by this track, and we didn't get to do anything with since there wasn't time really during virtual Dragon Con and we weren't there in person. In January, we will have some fan panels. In addition to another monthly author interview, we will have some fan panels covering Legacies, mostly season 2, and then also the new Nancy Drew series. And those panels will both be, and those will be live, and those will take place before the new season's debut. So we hope that if any of those are something you're interested in, you will join us for that. Now, the thing that is probably of most interest to those of you that are watching this right now is that beginning in February, we will be doing a monthly rewatch of Supernatural, starting with season 1. So we will have a panel every month, and that will be determined later. Beth is very excited. That will be determined later as to what the date will be, the date and the time, and all of that. So we hope that will be something fun to look forward to. Please stay tuned to the announcements on our Facebook page. If you do not follow our Facebook page, please look there for announcements, because that's the best place to get them. So without further ado, everybody got their tissues? Everybody got them handy? Are we good to go? I'm going to have our panelists introduce themselves. We will be getting joined in a few moments by Gail, who is actually involved in there she is right there. Okay. There we go. Hi, Gail. Perfect timing.
Hey,
so I'm
hanging with Jared.
Yes, well, I told the panelists that you did have, a good excuse. You what?
I took notes.
Okay, cool. So those may come in handy. So the first thing we'll do then is what we always do, and I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves and to our viewers, and we'll begin with Damien.
Hey everybody, I'm Damien. I am a panelist here on the Urban Fantasy track. I have covered Supernatural for Dragon Con and the fan panels for over 10 years now. I also do a couple of different podcasts along with this, such as the Stuff We Like, Stuff We Hate podcast, and the Need Coffee's Weekend Justice podcast over at needcoffee.com, where we also participate in other panels here at Dragon Con every year. And yeah, I've got my tissues. I'm all cried out.
Okay. And Kristen. Oh, you're turned off, Kristen. We can't hear Kristen. Okay, you got you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure, just in case the computer didn't make noise. It's a new
Gotcha.
one,
Okay.
so hopefully it won't make noise. My name is Kristen Jackson. I'm a graphic designer and freelance artist. I've been working in the film industry for almost the past 10 years now, and working with some of the behind the scenes people that were a part of Supernatural. I'm a longtime fan since the very first episode. So this 15-year journey has been, and to see it all end has been kind of an emotional past few weeks, and especially this last episode. So I'm hoping to help with all the other people here, help kind of process through some of the things that happened in this final episode.
That's a good way to put it. We're going to process through. We're going to do it. Marks.
Yeah, I'm Marcus Pyle. I'm a indie filmmaker, web series creator, co-author of the interview podcast show Genretainment. And I get my MFA in January. Woohoo! And I plan on launching an urban fantasy series that I've written. And I did live in Vancouver when I went to film school, so I did have Impala sightings. So that was fun.
Oh.
and yeah, so I just love Supernatural. I've been watching it since the very beginning.
And Beth.
Hi, I am Beth Dolfner. I write paranormal fiction and nonfiction. And not only do I have my tissues today, I also brought a bottle of wine just in case. So I am ready. I am ready for wherever this discussion takes us today.
And those two things might be important together. So yes, okay, very good. I like that. And I would like to let our viewers know that Beth is especially dedicated today because it's her birthday as well as joining us from Germany. It's her birthday. So
for my birthday, I get to cry on the internet.
There you go. Who'd have thought, right? And Gail.
Hi, I'm Gail Z. Martin. I write epic fantasy, urban fantasy, near future, post-apocalyptic, and more. And as Morgan Bryce, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. I've been a Supernatural fan for the last 5 years, and what I lost by not being there from day one, I think I've made up for in sheer obsessive focus. So
I like the way that you describe that as obsessive focus. Now, before we begin with the first topic that I would like to discuss, I would like to ask my panelists, and then those of you who are watching, if you would like to also in the comments answer this question, would my panelists hold up their fingers to reflect how many times have you actually watched this finale since it aired Thursday evening? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, Gail's got us beaten by a long shot.
and I'll qualify that. I've watched the death scene 5 times. I have not watched the whole episode again.
Oh, okay. And
so Gail is just a glutton for punishment.
I was looking.
And Melissa says she's watched 4 times. So yes. Okay.
Wow.
So what my first question topic is, and we've got several other people in the comments here who say that they've done at least twice, and 4 for Melissa. So yeah, it's kind of that way, isn't it? Basically what I did was I actually had a virtual book group meeting that evening. It went till 9 o'clock. And then after that, my husband, who does not watch Supernatural, he's a good guy though. The joke was that he used to come and tell me goodnight before he retired. He would be going to bed really early, and if I was watching an episode, typically a recorded version thereof, because you can go through the commercials. He would see what I was watching, and he'd say, "Well, have fun with your dead people." That's what he always used to say about this particular show. So in any case, but after I got done, I was watching something with him, and I was like, well, I'm not even going to get on Facebook or go to any other social media because I don't want to see any comments until I watch it. So at that point, I did go and watch it. And all of you know about my notebooks. So, I'm writing my notes, and, taking in the opening montage, the whole the pie festival and all that. And I literally have a note that refers to, and I could probably read it right here, a lightheartedness about the episode so far since they solved the metaphysical arc last week. Okay, and then we know what happens next. Literally, the next thing that happens is the scene in the barn. And what my question for you guys is did you find that to be the case as well, that you were kind of getting this false sense of security from that first close to half of the episode before we got hit with that? Were you feeling as though, okay, this is, this is nice? Were you feeling kind of comfortable? Damien, we're going to begin with you.
No, actually, I never got comfortable. Like, even in the beginning, right? I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, this is them living their mundane kind of existence of doing their day to day. This looks a little too happy. What are they about to do? Because it's supernatural. I'm automatically suspicious that anytime there's something good happening to the boys, something bad's about to happen. So when that went down, I'm like, nah, there's a little too much. I'm happy. I got a dog. I'm washing dishes. We're eating breakfast. I'm like, nope, a little too happy here. We're being set up.
Okay. And that was pretty much what happened. Yes. Kristen?
Same here. And it was almost like the level of happiness that they were showing, was like up here. So I knew the crash was going to be like way down there, just because that, you can't have that much just average, normal, cheerful sunshine without something really big and dramatic about to, follow up and punch you in the head right behind you. So, with the pie, I mean, that was funny, and the toast, and and I thought, God, they're going to really smack it to us whenever what happens comes. Because I was kind of, that's like last week when I was saying I was kind of feeling that was the end to the story of the boys, and what are they going to possibly follow up with, but something that is going to be extremely painful to watch. So watching that, all the lighthearted moments, I thought they can't, this is not going to be how it ends. I just can't. I was hopeful.
Right.
If we could have a whole 45 minutes of that would have been great, but I knew they wouldn't. No way. This is supernatural. If you've watched this many episodes in this many years, you know that is not going to be the show.
Yes. Marks.
Yeah, I was on guard too during the episode because I felt like there's no way this is going to be the last episode. It's not going to be a plain, regular day. And because they weren't, in my mind, the only reason why you would have a episode where it doesn't end the way it ended would be like if you were wrapping up storylines. And they weren't really doing that at this point. They weren't talking about anybody who maybe came back or didn't come back. They weren't talking about much of anything to wrap that up. So it's like, something bad's going to happen. So I was on guard for a while, and me and my wife were watching it. So we kept going, oh my gosh, something bad's going to happen, but I hope something bad doesn't happen, but I think it's going to happen. So,
they were stringing you along. Yeah. Well, and we did have the question from our discussion last week about what did the new world look like? Were there going to be supernatural threats? And that was answered fairly early on. So we do know the answer to that question now. Beth.
I said last week that if this final episode was just the boys sitting around having a big Thanksgiving dinner with their loved ones, I would have been perfectly satisfied with that. But that's just not how it works in the supernatural universe. Like everybody else has said, I mean, when things are going really great in the world of supernatural, something's going to go really horribly, terribly wrong. So I was waiting for it, but it was worse than I was expecting.
Okay. And Gail.
I just had the feeling that Dean was going to die, so I was kind of braced for it. I expected one of three endings. One, that they were both going to die bloody. Two, that there would be a time lapse and we'd see them both dying of old age. Or three, that Dean was going to die and we'd have some degree of a reverse swan song. And what I had hoped there was that we weren't going to leave it with one brother alive and one brother dead and not have them get to be together in the end. That was probably my biggest fear about the finale, was that we wouldn't have that resolution of them finally getting to be back together again. And so I think I was so relieved that I didn't get the worst ending I had thought of, that I was actually very happy with what we got, because I had imagined it being possibly so much less satisfying. So I was actually okay with it.
Okay. Now, and that's actually a good segue into my next question. Were you actually surprised by Dean's death, and not the fact that he died, or well, it could be the fact that he died, but or if you weren't surprised by that, were you surprised by the method of it and how it was handled? Kristen, we'll start with you this time.
Okay. When the camera, if you remember, the camera kind of took a look at that nail.
Yes.
Projecting out of the beam, and I felt like this was going to be what was happening. And when Dean hit that pillar and he didn't react at first, I thought, well, maybe it was a different beam or
a different
pillar or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't get that horrible, that was a fake out. And then it just, so for me, it was a shocking death because of its suddenness, and because of, I mean, you expect someone is probably going to have a very bad ending in this show, but to see it play out like that was hard to watch. So that was a really hard scene for me. And yes, Supernatural really came through and did a good death scene. If one of the boys had to die, that was
the
good.
way to do it.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Marks, what about you?
I'm kind of torn about it. I'm still like processing it. I feel like Dean was always kind of destined probably to die first, because he always thought he'd die on a hunt. He never really tried to start a family much. I guess there was one storyline where he kind of tried, but Sam's always wanted the normal life and stuff. So I think it makes sense watching throughout the series that it might end this way. And then I guess it adds to it. It was just a random hunt, right? So, so I guess I wasn't surprised necessarily it happened. I kept, as they were getting to fight these vampires, I'm like, oh, Dean's gonna die. He's gonna die. It's like, hopefully Sam doesn't too, but yeah. And it's kind of weird, because I feel like the case of the day was kind of generic. Like, did they eat all the vampires or not? They didn't really make that clear. And I don't know, there's some stuff about that bothered me a little bit, but yeah, so it wasn't that surprising. There was that shot on the nail, so I knew something was going to happen with that. Somebody was going to get impaled when that happens. So I don't know, it made sense, but then I was also kind of like, but it just happened. Like, they just saved the world, because you just had like a few months to live.
Right. Exactly. Beth, what about you? You got your tissues in your wine hand?
Yeah. I feel like I was shocked by Dean's death, but I wasn't surprised. And the best analogy I can think of for it is that it's like when you're in a haunted house and that as soon as you go around the corner, something's going to jump out at you and scare you. It's coming, and yet you still scream and jump when it happens. And I seem to remember, Gail might know better than me, but I seem to remember that years ago when media would ask Jensen and Jared what they wanted for the ending of Supernatural, Jensen always said, I think the boys should go down swinging. And Jared always said, well, I think that they should get their happy ending. They should get to live out their lives and have some reward. So I actually felt like this was the right ending for the show because each actor kind of got what he wanted for his character. So ultimately, I'm very happy with how they wrapped things up. It was just really painful getting there. the whole journey of getting there was really, really painful. But yeah, I wasn't surprised, but I was still just really upset by it.
Gail.
So going into writer mode is kind of my way of sort of emotionally distancing from something. And I'm sitting there noticing Sam got stabbed in the back and all hell breaks loose. Dean dies from getting stabbed in the back. Dean has his hand on Sammy's back and then looks at it and sees the blood and realizes, oh God, this is going to happen. Sam reaches around, sees the blood on his hand, and he knows this is it. And there were so many echoes of things they'd said to each other before. I can't do this. Yes, you can. Well, I don't want to. And so my writer brain is just cataloging this. And then there's this lovely video that somebody had up by the next morning. So I'm assuming they didn't sleep. That went through Stephanie and showed all of the instances where those phrases were repeated. It's a gorgeous clip. Somebody really spent some time on this. And then you really saw how it threaded back through the whole series and all the comments. And I was just loving that because that wasn't just a good plot device. That meant somebody cared enough to really put the touches on it to make it perfect. And that kind of blunted the pain for me because I sort of knew it was coming.
Okay. Yeah, the call outs did make that, it made it more meaningful, I guess. And okay. And Damien.
Whoo! All right, dude. I was a mess, right, with that scene. Definitely, I knew it was coming. Like everyone else said, the whole railroad kind of spikes, the steel wrought iron spike sticking out of the beam. We knew something was going to happen. We just didn't know which one for a second. And when you see it's Dean, and I'm sitting there, like my wife was upstairs working, you hear me go, "Oh my God, they're effing about to kill Dean." And sure enough, and I'm sitting and I had to, then I watched it all, and then I didn't even go through the rest of the episode. I actually went and rewound it immediately and started the whole vampire fight scene over again. And immediately mid-episode rewatched Dean die again and felt something, right? There are a lot of times where, yes, characters die on TV shows and what have you. Like this, like I like actually felt something. This wasn't like any of the other times where the boys' lives really were hanging in the balance, whatever. You knew, like, this is the final episode. So
Right.
You're sitting there and you're like, man, this is really happening. They are killing Dean. Wow. And my wife goes like, what? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, they are killing Dean. And she was like, no. I'm like, yeah, this is happening. Oh my God. Right. And I'm sitting there rewatching it a second time, and I'm watching all the callbacks and everything else. And man, that one hurt, right? That one hurt. And watching the funeral pyre where it's just Sammy and the dog hurt, right? Because it just felt like, man, out of all the things that they've done and the countless times they've saved the world and saved people, Sam's literally having to do this funeral pyre for his brother by himself with just the dog. No one's there. No one's there. Even the people that were brought back, nobody's there. And I'm like, that's awful, right? That's lonely. So definitely those were some real heavy emotional beats for me in this episode where I was just like, okay, well, you got it right. Right? This is the one time you got me right in the gut. Here. Thanks, Supernatural.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Well, we have some comments from some of our viewers, but before we do that, I'm going to go kind of do something a little different than what I typically do. And I'm going to answer my own question. And just because, it's the finale. And what happened when I was watching was some of you had pointed out that you had noticed the rebar or the nail or whatever it was sticking out of the wall. And I did not until I watched it the second time. But I did see, I did notice when he got thrown against the wall, I was like, oh, that can't be good because he wasn't moving. I mean, he didn't fall, or, he didn't slide to the ground like he was knocked out, or he didn't, there was something going on with that. But what happened there is, especially after having written my little observation about, oh, well, this one's being kind of lighthearted. And then for this to happen, I stopped the recording on my DVR, and I went. My husband was in the other room working, and I went and got a tissue because yeah. And I told him, well, I just had to take a break for a minute, and he said, well, what happened? I said, well, they killed off one of the brothers. He's like, but it's supernatural. And I said, but it's the final episode. There's no more time to, for them to show back up again. So I think there was that finality aspect of it that was one reason it was so affecting. Personally, I do think it made more sense for it to be Dean rather than Sam, because I don't think Dean would have handled it so well if he had been the one left. I just don't think he would have. I think he went out the way he always expected to, and the way that he not necessarily wanted to, but that he expected to. And so that was my feeling. Let's see. Now we have a few. Here we go. One comment from Melissa here on no backsies. Yeah.
I think it would have been a really short episode if Sam had gone first, because Dean would have gone 5 minutes later, and then they would have been in heaven for the rest of the episode.
Right. Yeah, that was definitely part of it. Now let's see. We did have. Let's see. We got some. Well, there was Hanako here says the funeral scene hurt, that Sam had to do that alone. Damien, you brought that up, and yeah, that was really sad, because in the past it had always been he and Dean together or somebody else with them, and yeah, so that was tough. So my next question is, we'll skip ahead to heaven because why not? How glad were we to see Bobby? The next time we have an in-person con, one of the things we're going to be talking about is all the people that we lost in this series over the course of the time. But I was really happy to see Bobby there, because if anybody deserves to be in heaven and greeting them, it's him. And my question for you guys is, what did you make of Bobby's comment when he was talking about, that Jack had basically redesigned heaven, and then Dean asked him, well, he did this all by himself, or Jack did all this, and Bobby says, well, he had some help from Kaz. Now, what did you make of that? Since the last, does that mean that somehow Jack somehow changed the empty as well? Or what was your reaction when you heard that comment? And Marks, we'll begin with you this time.
Yeah, that's what I assume, is that he brought him from the empty. I mean, they needed to he needed to bring some angels back or make some new ones, because heaven was running out of juice, right? I think we saw that in a previous season. So that was, good that Cass might be back, and it makes sense. But that's why I took from it. I'm really glad they did that with heaven, because I've always thought heaven seemed very cold and kind of sad, and I'm glad that they brought down the walls. That was a really big thing they did for the world that I think was
very cool looking in all the scenes that we ever saw of heaven. That's what it was.
Yeah, you're just living through your memories, isolated from your loved ones, the real loved ones. So I'm glad they took the walls down. So
Mhm.
Okay. Beth.
Well, I love that line, and it was so quick, and I actually have seen some comments where clearly people missed it when they watched the episode. But we were talking about it last week. Well, like, what about Cass? You know, why didn't they ask Jack to bring him back? And obviously Jack did, and took him to heaven with him. And actually, by the time we got to that point in the episode, I was still crying, and I was like, hey, Castiel is back, and my husband literally was laughing at me by this point. He's like, Beth, this is a good thing. Why are you crying about it? And I was like, I'm just going to be crying for a while now. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If somebody could call me and tell me I just won $5 million in the lottery, and I'd probably keep crying about it. But yeah, it was just a nice way of kind of giving us a little bit of closure about what happened to Castiel in the end. So I thought it was nice that they included that for us.
Okay. Gail.
Yeah, I caught it, and I thought that was a great way of kind of wrapping up the last piece of Cass's story, because Cass didn't deserve to be stuck in the empty, and Jack, of all people, well, gods, he's now God plus Amara. He's the biggest bad of bads. He can, if he wants to grab somebody out of the empty, he can grab them, and so he certainly would, because he saw Cass as a father figure. So I thought that was very fitting that Cass was going to be up there and maybe helping Jack in other ways to fix heaven, because Cass always kept trying to fix heaven. But I thought that was very appropriate. Yeah, I was okay with that.
Okay. Damien.
I think that worked for me because remember Cass was Jack's first dad and the person he was closest to, right? But the other part is when we look at the episode from the other week where God is chastising Cass, and he's like, but you just keep trying to, do it this way over and over again. You always have to try to be so helpful, right? It kind of fits with what Cass was, right? Who Cass is, rather. And it made sense. And I was happy that certain things got fixed in such a way, like when Bobby mentions John and Mary have a house over there. I'm like, oh, well, cool. I wonder who else is there. And at the same time, it's like, wait, is this world Bobby, or this is other world Bobby? Which Bobby are we talking to right now? And of course, the natural is it's this world's Bobby.
Right.
But still, you never know it's supernatural, right? It could have been the other Bobby. We don't know what happened to him yet either.
Yeah.
But that was a good fix, right? To allow people to actually intermingle and have their spaces, and you noticed what it looked like. It fit Bobby, it fit Dean, it fit John and Mary, from a standpoint of like kind of who they've been, where they've hung out, and what they do with their lives. I'm like, that's appropriate.
Right. Okay. And Kristen.
For me, I really appreciated that comment that it was both Jack and Cass who fixed heaven, because of all the supernatural beings, those were probably the two that understood humanity the most. And they understood the meaning of family and what it means to have friends. Whereas the original heaven, built by God, sustained by the angels, they didn't have that appreciation of life. So they wouldn't have an understanding of an afterlife from a human point of view. So for me, I thought that the two people, or the two beings who could have fixed heaven to make it our human idealized version of heaven would be those two. So, and I'm glad too that they did mention that Cass had been rescued out of the empty. And I kind of think that would have happened, just even if they hadn't mentioned it, but I'm glad they did because that kind of made it more, that solidified it as actually having happened.
Right, because that was the question a lot of people had, because we certainly were talking about that just even last week. And I can't imagine that wasn't something that was of interest to everyone. Now we have a comment here from Hanako about Jack probably offered the empty the piece she wanted if she would release Cass from his deal. And that's a good point. Especially since Jack inadvertently caused a few issues for her himself without knowing it, when he actually exploded and she started hearing all this noise and she was very upset with him. So, that would be a way to kind of make amends to her and still get what he wants, I suppose. So that was interesting. But my next question is about just what were some of your favorite scenes from the episode. Some of the somebody mentioned here that let's see, where did we see? I saw this. Somebody asked about did we notice the Harvilles? Yeah, here we go. I wanted to find it. Did you all notice Harvilles? And I did, but I didn't notice it until the second time. I didn't notice the name of it just because, well, I won't get into a long explanation, but I watched this on the TV, and our HD channel, our HD reception is blocked right now because of a scaffolding my husband has outside. Thanks, David. So I can't record things or some stations in HD. So I didn't notice it the first time, but the second time I did, because I made a point of looking. I saw where it said Roadhouse, but that was a cool little throwback there, or call out. But what were some, for you guys, for my panelists, and for our viewers, what were some of your favorite scenes from the episode? And Beth, we'll begin with you.
I think for me, it was just when Dean said, I want to go for a drive, and went over, and just the way he was talking to Baby, because my concern when he first showed up in heaven that he wouldn't even be able to find peace there because Sam wasn't with him. Even though Bobby explained that time worked differently, I just had this sense of him being worried and upset until the day that Sam finally arrived. So to see the way Dean went over to the car and was just so happy to have Baby there with him and to be able to go out and drive and let loose a little bit, it was like, okay, he is at peace. Like he somehow understands that it is okay, and that Sam will be there soon enough. And so that just felt nice to see Dean for the first time, maybe, to be so truly at peace and not worrying about his little brother for once. And that was really nice to see.
Okay. Gail.
A couple of things. I spotted some of them, but then Jared mentioned them in his Stage It an hour ago. One is that the first words the brothers said to each other are the same as the last words we hear the brothers say to each other. In the fight in Sam's apartment in the pilot, says, "Hiya, Sam." And he says, "Dean." And the last things they say on the bridge,
The same.
"Hiya, Sam," and "Dean." Jared asked wardrobe to come as close as they possibly could to his outfit from the pilot for his scene on the bridge.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Which I had not picked up on. And he also made the comment that Sam's heaven is mostly about Dean, which I thought was really interesting. Somebody pointed out that when in Sam's death scene, he's wearing Dean's watch. When Sam dies of old age, he's wearing Dean's watch. I almost lost it when he went and sat in the Impala as an old man.
Oh yeah, that was, yeah.
Because he was so ready to go. But the other thing I loved, and I think it was a clever way of kind of giving everybody a little bit of what they wanted in this, was that I'd been so afraid we'd end up with a long extended emphasis on Sam's life with, Sam gets married, Sam has this, and I didn't want it to take away from the brothers. And we got to see that he did have a life with
Mhm.
blurry female person on the
You're right.
But it didn't sidetrack the emotional connection of the story and take it away from the brother. So Sam got his apple pie life for a while. He got his son. We assume he had some sort of relationship with this woman besides baby mama. And he got a nice long life. But then he comes back to Dean, and that was very emotionally satisfying to me. But I know there were a lot of other people who were really invested in seeing Sam get that life, and they got a glimpse of it. So I thought they did a good job of making going as far as they could to make everybody happy. But those Easter eggs, like the comments and the watch and being on the bridge, okay, that broke me.
Well, and then in old Sam's death scene, the fact that his son said the same words to him that he had said to Dean, that was very touching, I thought too.
All the family pictures all over the mantle.
Oh yeah. Exactly. Damien.
What man? Kind of a lot of the stuff that Gail said, right? I noticed the watch right away, right? The old it's a Timex that they've come out with, or a G-Shock watch that they've reproduced in the past 10 years. That's become very, very popular. So that stood out right away. Like when they were having the death scene, and I looked down, I'm like, oh, he's still got the watch on, right? And of course, but then there's the part where you see him walking his son, and it says Dean.
Right, he's got the
front of the right. I'm like, man, that's I'm gonna name my son after my brother, right? And you're right, random female baby host in the background, and at the same time, I'm glad, right? I'm glad that it's just random, blurred out, because it's not the most important thing. They kept the emphasis on the child, but you got to see Sam having the thing that he wanted, right? Which is, think about it. Sam's like, no, I don't want to be a hunter. I want to go to college. I want to have a life. I want to have X, Y, Z. And it's like, okay, I've done this, and this is ended. But you still see some of that constant mourning of his brother, whether it's just how he looks at his son a certain way, how he deals with certain things, like the Impala scene, right? Where, yep, it's still in the garage. It's nothing's happened to it, right? It's just sitting there. Him keeping the watch, whatever. There's almost like a subtle mourning that's ever present with Sam. That I would see throughout old episodes anyway, right? Where Sam just is kind of, Dean is kind of blunt and what have you, and Sam has always seemed kind of almost tortured. And I still saw some of that even with a family and a kid, but you also saw joy, but you also saw how when he was helping the kid with the homework, and he stops and he just looks at his child for a brief moment. That conveyed a lot. So I'm glad that, they both got what they wanted at the end of it. I'm just surprised there wasn't more pie.
Well, the pie did figure in, though. So.
Yeah, briefly in the beginning.
Yeah, it sure did. Kristen, what about you? What were some of your favorite scenes?
Well, I have 3 things that kind of are coming in my mind right now. 1 happy and 2 kind of sad. And to character, story, and then just the emotional processing. So the first one, the happy one, would be the pie, where Dean not only comes back with pie, he comes back with all the pie.
Right.
And then when he offers it to Sam, Sam takes the healthy one. If you notice, it's like, there was this, all the very bad for you pie, and then Sam picks the one slice that was healthy. So that was kind of, to character. That was, who they were, and that was kind of fun.
Kristen, all pie is healthy.
for
Says
For-
the baker extraordinaire.
the
yeah.
baker. For the kind of the sadder ones where Sam is made the funeral pyre, and then he throws Dean's lighter into the fire. So I was kind of wondering if that was meant to indicate an end to hunting, because the burning the bodies of the hunters and everything, that's kind of part of the life and part of the process. And when he threw that thing away, I was like, no, don't throw the lighter. And then it goes right in the fire. And well, maybe he got it, scraped it out afterwards. I don't know. But that to me felt like an ending of the hunting side of things. And then the third thing I noticed and kind of speaks to me was where at the start, where they're doing, scrambling the eggs and having the toast. And then when Sam is doing it by himself, to me, that feels like everybody's experience of having a lost loved one, where you're going through the motions of things. And see, I'm starting to get emotional right now. But missing the things, the little things that you notice that are just in everyday life.
Yeah, like when he jumps, when the toast comes up, we used to have a very noisy toaster like that, because he's remembering that Dean would always get the toast out right when it was too hot, and little things like that. And
and that's kind of what we all do. You look around and you miss the person because of the things that they used to have together, and now it's just one of you. So those are the three things that I kind of drew me in.
Okay. Marks, what about you?
Yeah, similar to a lot of people, what people have already said. Like, I like the pie scene is very classic Dean. I liked a lot of the callbacks to both season or episode 1, and then callbacks to the beginning of this episode to other scenes in the end of this episode. I liked how they did 2 versions of Carry On song, so that was nice. And that whole sequence of him driving, and then we see Sam, getting older and such. I really liked his skin aged very well. I noticed. But the only thing I wish they could have done, and I bet you it's production stuff, or maybe there's a story reason why they did it that way, is I kind of would wish Eileen could have been that woman, because I just feel like they would have tied up that romance arc that they started that season. But it's also not that important, like other people have said already. It's more important about Sam and then this son, and it was very touching scene, and very powerful scene. Really felt very final for Dean. And I think it fit very well with when you look back at how the show started. And I don't know if you guys read this, but Kripke did an interview, and he said everybody would have hated my scene. You forget this is a horror story, so it would not have ended very happy.
I did not read the article, but I did see the headline. I tend to prefer to process all these things on my own first, and then head into reading other people's takes on them. That's just the way I prefer to approach it. But I did see that headline, and I thought, oh God, what did you have going on for us? And if we have time, which that just depends on what everybody else has got going on. I do have a couple of things that I wanted to talk about from that retrospective episode as well. Some of the comments that people made. But one of the scenes that we have, some scenes that some of our viewers have commented about, which I'll put those up in just a moment. But I did want to add that I did enjoy the kind of the opening montage with that song "Ordinary Life" playing in the background, and where it was showing them going through the motions of a day and how they looked. Nothing was out of the ordinary, all that exciting, but it was just ordinary. And they were together, and so we got to see that they at least had that for a little bit of time, if that was what they wanted. But I think one of the other scenes that had an impact on me was when after Sam had gotten that call, and when he's leaving the bunker, and he's looking down the balcony, and we see he turns the lights off one at a time. And I was like, okay, that's kind of final looking to me. That is this his last hunt? Is that it? And so I thought that was a significant view. But let's see, we have some here. Here is from Renita, the comment about that others of you have mentioned about when Sam went and sat in Baby as an old man, and that was very affecting. And Melissa had said that Sam smashing pie into Dean's face is today's favorite moment, and her favorite changes daily, which apparently it does within minutes, because she then said just a few minutes later that she changed her mind, and the moment that Sam arrived in heaven was her favorite. But so those are some of them, some of those moments there. And then Hanako commented here in response to you, Marks, that I think him being with Eileen would have been too much of a reminder of all that he'd lost. And the mystery woman was an indicator that Sam had left hunting behind. So that's also another interesting perspective and question.
Yeah.
I thought it left it open by not being able to see who she was. You could read
Yes.
it, had found somebody completely out of the life. But because the person had dark hair, you could also read it that he found Eileen. I mean, if you wanted to, you could say he went back to Amelia, but at least it was a dark-haired person. So I think
Right.
for your own personal headcanon.
Yeah, because I did find myself pausing it and going up to my TV and sitting there and looking and saying, okay, is there any indication as to who that might be? And other than the dark,
It was Ruby.
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
there you go.
Ruby.
Who knows? I mean,
Oh my gosh, it's fake Ruby.
who knows? But I think that it was supposed to be open-ended. Now, my final question about the episode itself is probably one that could take us from now until next week. Were you satisfied with the finale? And if not, why not? And Gail, it's your turn to go first, so let's go for it.
Yeah, I was. As I said, I had envisioned some finales that I would not have been as satisfied with, and I was really, really happy not to get them. I really loved the ending of the season finale with them driving off into the sunset, and I just wanted the boys to be together, dead or alive. If they'd have lived to die of old age together, I would have been okay with that. If they'd have died together and gone to heaven together, I would have been okay. I just wanted to know at the end of it, they were together. And so that's what mattered to me. The other thing I was honestly watching for, because Jared and Jensen have both hinted that they kept saying, this isn't the end of it. We're going to hang it up for 3 or 5 years. Don't worry, we'll be back. There'll be more. And I was watching for how. And I believe that there was a longer period between when they beat Chuck and when Dean died, because we really don't know how much time elapsed. And the giveaway to me is that Miracle seemed very young when Dean found him or her. But if you watched Sam leave the bunker that last time, there was a shot of the dog struggling to get up
the stairs. Yeah.
There was no reason to put that shot in there, except in my mind to indicate that the dog was older. Because if the dog just didn't like the steps, Sam would have been kind of carried the dog up the steps. So why spare a shot for this dog having difficulty going up the steps? Any dog owner knows that's an old dog. Right. And so there's some and dogs can live, 15 years. So maybe they did have that time. More than a few days or weeks or months to spend together. Maybe that's if they're able to come back and revisit with some movies or miniseries or whatever. Maybe it's that period they can come back to, because then Sam and Dean would also be approximately the same age as the actor, so it wouldn't be off, by a generation or something. That's doable. So that's my headcanon, and I'm sticking to it. And for all those reasons, and just the beauty of having them come back together again on the bridge. And I was so glad to get Harville's in there. Yeah, I was happy with it.
Okay.
I had peace when they were done.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, nice. Very nicely done. Nice way to pull that in. Damien.
Yeah. Unlike a lot of the internet that I saw before I even watched the episode, right? Because they're like, I saw complaints of, oh, that was awful, or oh, this and that, and I'm like, wow, this is like a lot of you are really, really negative right now. I ended up finally being able to watch it for myself. I didn't watch it until Friday afternoon. And with that, I was in a fairly, good headspace. I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm in a good mood. Let's just go ahead and get this over with. And it's like, look, this is the end. Let's, instead of playing around with it, let's just rip the Band-Aid completely off. And with that, I am absolutely satisfied with how they ended it. Right. Given what they had to do, especially with COVID and shutdowns and everything else, and change ups and babies and all of these things that came along with this year, right? Mm-hmm. How they ended it was just fine for me. They did all the appropriate callbacks that needed to get brought back in. They kept the focus on the boys themselves versus any of the other side characters we came along with. Think about it. It was like, no, yeah, we knew Jack and Cass had done X, Y, and Z, but we didn't need to see them, right? We got to see how they reacted. I agree with Gail. When you see the dog struggle to go up the steps, it's like, oh, okay. And when you factor in, when you look at Dean, Sam's son, right? He's still fairly, really young, right? When Sam dies.
Right, yeah.
And to see them both get what they want in the end, reunite at the end on the bridge, and the ending shot, it's Sam and Dean, Bobby, and the crew, right? That wide shot. That's who's on that bridge. And I appreciated every last bit of that, especially the crew being able to be seen and what have you and get their due. That's a long time for a show to be on the air, and influence a lot of fandom and a bunch of commitment, on a lot of parts. And yeah, I'm happy, right? I'm happy that Sam got out of hunting. I'm happy that Dean got his heaven. I'm happy that they ended it with them together, and that was cool for me. But it was also cool for me that, hey, there's Bobby. Like, Bobby was there with them as well, right? And then you see everyone else. And I'm like, okay, I'm good here. You know what? This ended perfectly. Didn't need anything extra out of it. So that's my spiel. Sticking to it as well.
There you go.
I also think his wife is Ruby. There we go. I'm putting that rumor out there on the internet now that Sam actually was married to Ruby and he just doesn't know it yet.
Oh, that was he
Right.
didn't even. Kristen, what about you?
I really enjoyed the ending. Like Damien, I saw that there was a lot of unhappy people commenting, but for me personally, I really was satisfied. I went into the episode without any real expectations of what they would do. So I was wide open. I did have some fears. I had a fear that it would be a fade to black, like The Sopranos, and we're spent the rest of eternity going, what happened next? Or,
Yeah, right.
A lost ending where it was so ambiguous and unresolved for where were they, what was going on, that we'd be asking questions for the rest of eternity. Or something really dumb like Newhart, where they just wake up and go, oh my God, it was all a dream. And so I was very happy we had none of that. We had an actual solid conclusion. And it was satisfying. They have in a supernatural way, they had a happy ending. They have a heaven together. And, that's kind of what they had always wanted, is to just be brothers together. And all their friends are going to be there and all their family's going to be there. And because of, the time working differently, the family that Sam made along the way, they'll eventually end up there too. So for me, that was just a really all around good ending. And then that, shout out to the entire, crew as they, pulled away from the bridge was, that's an ending to the series. And that was just really a nice thing to do, I think.
Kristen, that kid's half demon. He ain't making it. I've got to keep
So
the
bad.
rumor going.
So
Damien
bad.
is sticking
It's
with
so
that
wrong.
rumor. Okay.
Wrong.
Marks, what about you?
Yeah, so I had mixed feelings about it when it happened, and I just took a while to process, and I'm liking it more and more every day. And I think I wrote a column a long time ago for a sci-fi website, and about like how do you do a good ending to a series, because it's so hard to do. There's so few of them that work, and I like the Lost one overall, but I know a lot of people hate the Lost one, and I like it because of the finality of like they're in the afterlife and everything like that. You don't get that very often in TV. But I didn't like the Arrow finale, for example, because they rebooted everything and changed what did they even do? I don't even know anymore. Everybody's alive. And I was kind of afraid they would do that with Supernatural. I didn't think they probably would. I mean, definitely not after the second to last episode. But they had talked about God trying to reboot the Earth and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, are they going to Jack's going to reboot the Earth? And then they're like, yay, we lived happy lives and stuff. And I'm like, no, don't do that. So I'm glad they didn't do that. But yeah, the only things I had problems with are things that I think Gail has a good point about, and that I'm going to make my headcanon too, is that more time has passed than we notice. That way we can have adventures in between there. That way they've aged a little bit, because without Cass healing them up, they're going to get wore down over time because it's human. And we have some adventures there to explore. And I think that's the one thing I kind of miss, because it feels so coincidental to be like, we just saved the world and we fought off God and all this stuff, and then our next case we die. So I'm imagining that it's taken longer than we thought. We have adventures in the middle of there that we can explore later, and then that works for me. So that's the only part. And I'm going to imagine it's Eileen until I hear otherwise. But Ruby's cool. Oh, and the one thing I wish they'd done, which I'm joking, of course, but I wish that he saw Scooby-Doo in heaven.
Oh, yeah. Well, did you watch that retrospective episode? And when Jared made the comment that he would do a whole season of Scooby-Natural and he'd be happy with that, and I'm guessing that probably a lot of other people would have as well. I thought that was amusing.
Yeah.
So, all right, Beth.
I'm satisfied with the ending. I feel like it was the right ending, because this is Supernatural. It's never going to be, and they all lived happily ever after. That just doesn't happen. And I think if they had tried to give us a nice ending where they both got to live out their lives and have families and stuff, it just wouldn't have felt right. It would have felt out of place for Supernatural. But I think, and then they all died and went on to live happily ever after in heaven, makes a lot more sense for this show. So I do think that it was the appropriate ending, because we get to see them ultimately having that peace. We get to see them happy and together, but not on this earth. This earth is a place where they were just never going to have that life of peace together. And I'm with Gail and Marks. I absolutely got the impression from that montage that we were supposed to see a routine that the brothers had established. I mean, that was what I assumed from the get-go with that they got up every day and made eggs and toast, and that they had learned to find balance in their lives, that they could go hunt monsters, but they could also go to pie festivals, and that's something that they had never had in the past. But now that all the big bads are out of the way and they can focus on the everyday monsters, they were able to kind of have that, they were still able to fight and have some kind of fun and enjoyment in their lives. So I like seeing that. And I like to believe that they did do that for quite a while before this last fight where Dean died. So yeah, again, I cried a lot, but yeah, it was the right ending. Absolutely.
Hey, Carol, Two comments. One is a statement that Jared made, which I thought was interesting. Somebody asked him what his favorite book series was, and he said Harry Potter. And he said, Sam and Dean were really each other's Patronuses.
Oh, yeah. Good. That
Wow.
is.
They really were. But the other thing, I know I've seen some comments from people who were disappointed because these guys fought God, they fought death, they fought all these big bads, and then you mean, a stupid vampire takes him out? And I'm thinking, how many times do we read about somebody who makes it home from a tour of duty in a war zone
Right.
and gets
And
killed on the
dies
way
in-
home or in
Right.
a traffic accident or hit by a
Right.
car?
Mhm.
The first thing that went through my mind was, on 9/11, it was a gorgeous sunny day with blue sky, and it was just another Tuesday until it wasn't.
Mm.
And that's how death happens in real life. It's just another Tuesday until your whole world falls apart. And I thought that was very real for me.
Very human.
Well, they're hunters too. Their life expectancy can't be that great.
Yeah, they'd
They're-
already
they're-
beaten the odds.
Right.
Yeah.
Think about police officers. They're like,
Mhm.
that's an occupational hazard that happens every single time you go out on a call. Period.
And didn't they always kind of reiterate that comment throughout the series that there are no old hunters?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's just a very, short and brutal type of life to be
I mean,
in.
Yeah. Rufus and Bobby were probably the oldest ones that we ever
Right.
saw for the
I mean,
course of the
I mean, it's
show.
better than Dean dying from a heart attack. 'Cause, I mean, really, I'm a cheat.
Right, especially.
Mhm.
Well, and we do have a few comments from our viewers, but a couple of things I wanted to say in regard to the time frame. The whole thing with the dog going up the stairs, that was something I noticed on the second viewing, but I
Mhm.
didn't catch it on the first one, that he was having difficulty getting up the stairs. So not only do we not know how much time passed in between because he jumped up on the bed to see Dean in the opening montage pretty early. We also don't know how much time passed between that final scene in the bunker with Sam and Dean's death. We don't know, what that was all. We don't know. So there are some things that they could do, to bring them back as characters, as you were saying, Gail. Because I had seen those articles and those interviews also where they were like, "Oh yeah, we're not done with these guys. We'll be doing something with these guys." And I kind of hate to think that they would have tried to mislead people that much. I don't think they would have done that on purpose. So
Yeah.
I think that could explain a lot.
Well,
Now,
they have like with
True. But I
with the
can't.
Marvel, like with Marvel, the Black Widow movie, she's dead, but
right.
they're just going back to revisit time when she wasn't dead.
Mhm.
And you think of all these summer hiatuses that we went through. Well, that doesn't mean that Sam and Dean stopped having adventures just because we were in that little summer window. They had adventures the whole time that we were waiting for the new season to start. So to me, to have them go back and visit a time, if there is a movie, and please God, let there be a movie, that there is acres of time that they could address, clear up other little bits of details or explore some other little corner of the world that didn't get as much attention as maybe people would like to see. So just because the series ended with them being in heaven, to me, doesn't mean by any long shot that it would be an ending of the story itself.
Yeah, it
Their
explains
world.
also, like, one thing that bugged me a little bit in the first viewing was that they didn't say, like, yeah, but, Apocalypse World people came back and, what are they up to and all that stuff. But what would explain that is if time has passed, they don't want to give away, they don't want to lock themselves in on anything, so they can they have that freedom to move. So I think that would make a lot of sense.
And Gail, did you have something you were going to say earlier?
Oh, just two quick things. One is, if anybody saw the cameo in the pie scene, there's a guy who walks past behind him, kind of gives him a look. It's Bob.
He's
Singer.
laughing. Yeah.
It's Bob.
Oh,
Singer.
that was him.
So cameo, and then the other thing that Jared said was and now I can't remember it. I'm sorry. He pointed out the cameo. And he also confirmed that there would have been more people back in the finale without the COVID restrictions, because you
Right. Yeah.
to quarantine for a half day.
I kind of wondered about that, because everything was so strict that they would have had difficulty bringing those people back. Now, Renita has a comment that I would like to actually, because this is something that's been bugging me. She said, I don't think Sam was completely out of the life since his son had the tattoo. Maybe he took up Bobby's old role. Well, the thing that kind of made me wonder about that is I've been wondering about that tattoo like crazy, because I saw the tattoo in the first viewing, but then when I watched it again last night, when I watched the episode again, I was like, okay, there's something significant about that tattoo, because they made sure we saw it. So I've been trying to figure out, well, what exactly was that tattoo? And I did want to address that I think, wasn't clear to me. Again, how much time, we don't know how much time that went in between. When did Sam give up the life, or did he completely, or was his son following in his footsteps, and all of that? So there are a lot of questions they could answer, in something.
Yeah, kids like cool tattoos. He saw it in his dad's shop and was like, "Oh, that looks cool. Let me throw it around."
Yeah. So I mean, was
We all
that
make
red
dumb
herring?
decisions
Was
sometimes.
that just something that there were a couple of things. Now, I do want to also address something that was in the retrospective. A couple of comments that I found interesting, and we won't have enough time. I know Gail has somewhere else to be at 4:00, and probably some of you want to go cry again. But Beth's got her tissues in her bottle of wine. She's all set, man. But there were some comments throughout this retrospective that I thought were interesting. One, and I was really glad to see Mark Sheppard show up in that retrospective. I thought that was great.
Yes.
He was anybody who was at DragonCon actually in person in 2019. He was one of our guests, and I got to do a panel with him, and he was a lot of fun. I enjoyed him. But Robert Singer, the director, did make the comment that the heart of the show is love between the brothers. That this was, to him, what was was something that I thought that kind of builds on that I thought was a really interesting comment is near the end of that retrospective episode that Eric Kripke made the comment that the relationship between the brothers was actually a character in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
That relationship was its own character. And I thought that was actually pretty profound, that was, it gave me food for thought anyway. And certainly if that was the case, they certainly did justice to it, with this finale. It's not something that Mark Sheppard said in one of his comments was that, and I think it was one of the last things that he said, that when he was talking about his character, about Crowley, he says, I was never sure whether he wasn't actually an angel. And I thought, okay, well, that was an interesting, if that had ever come up as a possibility in the past, or all these things that over 15 years you can build up, a mythology the way that they did. And how many times during just our discussions over these last episodes for the past 7 weeks have we said, well, back in season whatever, somebody brought up this. And when you have that much to draw upon, I mean, shoot, you can you can go all kinds of places. But I found all three of those comments. I mean, I wrote down a lot of stuff. I took as many notes from that retrospective as I did from the finale itself, to be honest with you. But just because these were the people who were actively involved in making the show, whether they were the ones saying the words or whether they were the ones creating the words or the ones behind the words. And do any of you have any final comments about either any of those things I just mentioned, the finale itself, the fact that people have been hanging here with us to do this and how much we appreciate that. But we'll go around the table, so to speak. Damien, what about you?
I have nothing new to add other than I'm glad the way that it ended. I got the ending that I wanted, and I'm gonna miss the boys, right? But I'm also glad that it's over, right? Like I've been invested in this since the very, very beginning.
Yeah, same here. Yeah,
and that's a very, very long time to be in a relationship like this. So with that, I'm like, okay, I'm glad the way that it ended, and yes, I absolutely would love to see them continue to do other things, like him doing Walker Texas Ranger. That was always awesome. I'm used to seeing Jensen and other stuff at different times because I know he voiced the Red Hood in some of the DC movies. But I also remember him as Coach Teague on Smallville, that when he was dating Lana, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, he's doing other things. So, but also, they've spent 15 years of living their lives strictly for this show. I'm glad that the actors and actresses are finally getting a break, right? To kind of, catch a break. You spend so much time giving and giving and giving, right? And I know fandom demands a lot, and they've been very giving outside of this. Misha Collins,
right.
Pretty much everyone on the show has always been very, very aware of their fandom and engages with them. And I appreciate that. And to all of them, cast, crew, everybody that works in production, what have you, thank you, right? Thank you. My daughter said to me, she was like, man, I was a kid when this show started, right? My daughter's an adult now, right? And then I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, this has been in your life since you were little, and now you're an adult. So, I'm glad to see that it's over, and I'm glad it got the ending that it got. And I'm gonna miss it. And at the same time, it's like, okay, let's invest in something else for a little bit.
And maybe not for 15 years this time.
Well,
Kristen, what?
Yeah. I'm going to definitely miss anticipating the next season. That's because it was something I always look forward to in the fall with the fall TV lineup and looking to see what the spoilers might be. And that part is over at least. But I have hope, 15 season in the movie. So I'll have my fingers crossed for that. And
You're
I know
sticking
Jason,
by that. Oh, go ahead.
Jason Fisher, he had posted something on Twitter saying, words to the effect of so how soon is it to start thinking about, a reboot or a movie? Everybody's replying back, not soon enough.
Yeah, no reboot, please.
No.
But
Yeah.
Movie, yeah, sure. Marks, what about you?
Yeah, I think this ending is what everything was kind of leading up to. What feels right for the characters. Could have went a much darker way. I didn't want a cliffhanger type thing like Angel did necessarily, or like Sopranos, like you said, cut to black. That would have been rough. And I like there's wiggle room to come back and explore the characters a little bit. But yeah, this is a big franchise for me. It's right up there with like when Stargate ended for me, and with when Buffy and Angel ended for me. So those are other franchises I really loved and was passionate about. I'm sorry that Supernatural. I wish Supernatural had gotten a spinoff. I feel like this would have been perfect, but yeah, it's a good send off, and it's just sad. I was about to watch So I was about to watch The Good Place ending, and I'm like, I can't handle this right now emotionally.
I have to go back and try that another time. What about you?
I have two things. One is I love the fact that this show started by drawing on popular myths, vampires and Hookman
Right.
and all of these things, and wound up developing a mythology of its own that I think we're going to see developing more in years to come, whether it is with a movie, whether it's with books, whether it may be a graphic novel, who knows what it might be. But I love that they started by borrowing ideas and wound up making so many of their own and
Right.
just have a really rich lore. And on a more personal note, and now it's been my turn to get. I had the
Those
funniest
tissues.
thought earlier today, which was I know get my tissues ready. I had the funniest thought, which was if it wasn't for Supernatural, Damien wouldn't have those bookshelves behind him, and
Absolutely.
it was such a funny thought. But it was just that because of this show, I've gotten to make new friends. I got to be a panelist at DragonCon for the first time because I was doing the Supernatural panel with you, Carol, and for the past 15 years, the show has just been a big part of my life, and I'm glad that I've gotten to share it with everybody. So, okay, go Gail. It's your turn.
A couple other quick things that Jared said. He said that Jensen was welcome anytime on Walker for anything you wanted to do, and they would definitely be working together again. And he mentioned the reboot more than once. So, and he kind of gave us a little wink on that one. He thought it was a happy accident that they couldn't bring more people in for the final scenes because it kept the focus on the brothers.
Right.
Agreed.
I think so too. I was happy with the ending, as I said at the beginning, because it ticked off all my boxes. And I know your mileage may vary, but it was good for what I wanted. And as for all the ways Supernatural changed and affected my life, that's my whole chapter in Lynn Zerbanis's There'll Be Peace When You Are Done. Because it did make some huge changes in my life, and it's given me a wonderful Supernatural family, and just made some amazing changes. And I do have to jump out because I'm moderating my 4 o'clock.
Oh yeah,
I'll
okay.
notice if I'm but
And what I wanted, yes, thank you, Gail. And I probably will have a few other. Everybody's tell Gail goodbye since she has to go. And I have
Hi,
a couple.
Gail. Thank
Hi.
you.
Hi,
Hi,
Gail.
Gail.
Bye.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
Gail, for being one of the faithful and here with us every time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for asking.
And
Great to
of
meet
course.
Yes.
Again.
And here we have a comment that I thought was a good one to end on from Hanukkah about I'm thankful we got 15 seasons and that they ended it the way they did, but I would also gladly watch another 15 years of this show with these characters. Job well done.
They
And I
wouldn't
thought
last. They'd be dead by then.
they would be some extra old hunters, but yes, and many thanks to all of you. I will. I'm going to ask my panelists, which I didn't think about doing beforehand, but I'm going to ask them to send me any of their information for websites, social media, stuff like that, anything they might want to include, and that will appear in the description of this panel. That you can go back and check on later if you would like. And we do very much appreciate all of you who have come as viewers. Some of you have been here every single week, and we so much appreciate that. And and even for those of you who just joined us the last few weeks, again, thank you for being here. And we will be doing, in case you didn't hear in the very beginning, some of my announcements is that beginning in February, dates, times, and all of that those have not been determined yet. But we will be beginning a monthly, not weekly, a monthly rewatch starting with season 1 in February of Supernatural. And one good reason for that is because it's been a long time since I've seen some of the early episodes, and because I need the notebooks. I don't have notebooks for 7 years, and I've got to have the complete set. I've got to create the ones for the first 7 years. So again, thank you to all of you. Thank you to my wonderful panelists. You guys have been amazing, and I appreciate you so much. So we will say goodbye, and thanks again to all of you for tuning in. We appreciate it very much. Bye all, and see you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.